Morning television is supposed to be easy. Coffee, compliments, and a couple of safe questions before the next weather update. But not this morning. The guest was poised, elegant, and known for commanding attention wherever she went. What was meant to be a thoughtful conversation quickly shifted into something sharper, more dangerous. The studio glowed with its signature blue and gold, the sleek desk polished to a shine as producers moved like chess players behind the cameras. Confidence filled the air. The anchors exchanged quick nods as the countdown to air began. The audience applauded as she entered, her presence like a carefully orchestrated note of perfume. She sat with deliberate grace, a smile on her face that was both warm and edged with something harder. The host greeted her warmly, hand extended, and she accepted with perfect composure. "It's always nice to speak with people who care about substance," she said, her tone carrying the ambiguity of either praise or warning. The red tally light blinked. They were live. The host began with a practiced smile, his voice measured and calm. He introduced her as an actor, producer, and philanthropist, ready to talk about projects, family, and the future. "You've been busy," he said smoothly. "New series in development, foundation work, public appearances. Where's your focus right now?" Her smile thinned and she leaned forward slightly. "My focus is always on impact, not headlines, not trends, impact. You don't need me to list bullet points for your highlight reel." The dismissal was sharp but controlled. The host blinked but pressed on without missing a beat. "Fair enough, but for the folks at home sipping their coffee, what impact do you want them to feel?" She rotated her words like diamonds under light. "Awareness, depth, nuance." He acknowledged the answer with a nod but pressed further, his tone soft and steady. "What's the story you're telling now that you weren't ready to tell 2 years ago?" She lifted her brows, eyes shining with a quiet challenge. "I was always ready. The world wasn't." A ripple of chuckles stirred through the audience, but the host's smile tightened at the edges. He pivoted, his tone still warm. "Speaking of stories, how's your husband?" The temperature in the studio seemed to slip a degree. Her chin lifted, her voice cutting but calm. "He's a human being, not a plot device. He's fine." "Glad to hear it," the host said, refusing to let the atmosphere crack his composure. "He's had his own projects recently." She cut in, sharper now. "And he doesn't need you to read his resume to me. We know who he is." The audience tensed. The host's light laugh filled the silence, but it was clear the exchange had landed. "I suspect you do," he said lightly. "People are curious, though. How do you support each other creatively?" She didn't miss a beat. "By being adults. It's not complicated unless people insist on making it complicated." The words hit like a gavel. The host tried again, shifting into safer ground. "All right, parenting. 2 kids, busy schedules. How's the balance at home?" Her smile flattened completely. "Our children are not content for breakfast television." His reply came quickly, hands raised slightly in respect. "Totally understand. I only ask as a dad who's constantly failing at packing lunches." The audience chuckled softly, but she remained still. "I don't fail," she said, her voice carrying the weight of finality. "I choose priorities." The silence stretched. Finally, the host nodded slowly. "Good motto." He pressed forward again, voice dipping into more serious territory. "Let's talk about royal life for a moment. Looking back, could anything have prepared you for that?" Her lashes lowered, eyes sharp beneath. "Prepared for an institution that treats women like ceremonial accessories? No, but I adapted faster than most would have." He leaned in, his voice quiet. "Yet it hurt." "You've said that before." "It hurt," she said evenly, "because people insisted on misunderstanding me." "Sometimes deliberately." The host paused, his expression tightening. "Some would say misunderstandings happen when multiple truths collide." "Is there any part of that time you'd handle differently?" She tilted her head, her tone slicing through the question. "I would have expected less from those who claimed to offer guidance. That was my mistake." The host's smile was thinner now, but he held it. "You've spoken often about telling your truth." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and her voice dropped into silk over steel. "My truth is truth. The qualifier is for people who can't handle it." A ripple of unease moved through the audience, the weight of her words landing heavily. The host chuckled softly, attempting to ease the tension. "I'll put that on a mug," he said, before turning to his next card. "Let me ask this. You've stepped away from duties, built a production brand, launched media deals. Some critics, fairly or unfairly, call it contradictory, wanting privacy while telling your story at scale. What do you say? Her smile returned, colder now. I say critics tend to be people who failed at doing what I'm doing. Privacy isn't silence. It's boundaries. There's a difference. If that's confusing, that's an education gap, not a moral failing. The host's eyebrows lifted slightly, amusement mixing with tension. Education gap, he repeated, letting the words hang. The studio seemed to hum with electricity. The segment was meant to be polished and smooth, but the edges had grown jagged. Each answer struck with precision, each question met with resistance. What was supposed to be easy morning television had become something else entirely. A test of patience, control, and the thin line between charm and confrontation. The set was polished, the lights sharp, but the tone already crackled with tension. A small, cutting laugh carried through as the question landed. Did men get asked whether they negotiated well, or was that reserved only for women, branded ambitious in the wrong way? The host grinned, playing it off with bright charm. Call it curiosity, he said, but yes, it was a win. She negotiated well. Her answer was measured, her voice steady. I set my value. If companies can't meet it, they're not ready for the work. He nodded, conceding with a calm, clear. Then came the pivot, her relationship with the UK. She'd once called the monarchy archaic. Was there space for reconciliation, or was the chapter closed? She sat straighter, lights catching on her cheekbones. I don't reconcile with systems, she said. I outgrow them. The audience stirred. For the first time, the host's smile thinned, his voice cooling into resolve. We'll take a break, he said, steady. Producers exhaled. Off-camera glances darted. She adjusted her cuff like it was armor. Next block, she said flatly. Let's skip rhetorical traps. He replied, smooth as glass. Never my style. Straight lines only. She studied him a second too long. We'll see, she murmured. The floor manager counted down. 2, 1. The red light blinked on, brighter than before. The host leaned into the camera. We're back, discussing projects, journeys, and what lies ahead. She angled toward him, chin high, lips curved into a half-smile that never touched her eyes. Projects, journeys, futures, it's amusing, she said. Everyone frames my life like it's a 3-act movie. This is real life. He countered with warmth, of course not, but her life fascinated millions. That curiosity drew viewers. He asked about her husband, how he was handling this chapter. Her eyes narrowed with disdain. He's fine, a grown man, not in need of babysitters or televised health checks. Nervous laughter rippled. The host nodded, joking lightly he'd pass along that CBS didn't need to check in. She shot back with sarcasm. Please do! He pivoted again, softer now to children, home routines, family balance. Her smile fell away. My children are not morning show anecdotes, she said coldly. Not punchlines or side stories for demographics. He raised his hands, calm, explaining he asked as a father about lunchboxes and chaos. She cut him off. Boundaries exist, and some forget. Off camera, his colleagues shifted uncomfortably. Still, the host pressed forward. You've chosen public life, speeches, shows. Doesn't some of that inevitably cross into family? Her laugh was short, sharp. Only when journalists drag it there. My family isn't content. He nodded, easing tension, then broadened again. The monarchy, outdated, even harmful. Was she condemning the people or the institution? She didn't hesitate. Asking me to separate them is like asking me to separate smoke from fire. It's all toxic. Some wear crowns, some hold pens, but the machine is the same. I stepped off it. The studio buzzed with murmurs. The host kept his grin, but his eyes tightened. That's strong language. Some may hear it as disrespect. Disrespectful to what? She snapped. To an institution that treated me as a foreign prop? If truth feels like disrespect, then perhaps it deserves none. The silence was heavy, the air electric. One co-host scribbled furiously in notes. Another glanced at producers as if to confirm this was really live. The host, refusing to lose composure, leaned back with a teasing tone. When my kids call me toxic, it's usually over homework. A few laughs broke the tension. She didn't join them. Cute, she said icily, but I don't joke about being dehumanized. The host drew in a breath, smile steady again, pivoting once more. Let's talk about your work. Partnerships, platforms, global stages. Reports suggested she demanded higher compensation for a recent project. Could she set the record straight? Her lips curved into something closer to a smirk. The studio lights glared with precision, but the atmosphere had turned sharp, almost brittle. The guest leaned forward, her voice measured yet edged with disdain. "I don't need to set the record straight," she said coolly. "The record bends toward those who succeed. And let's be clear, I'm not ambitious. I'm effective. There's a difference." The host chuckled softly, though his eyes flickered with strain. "That's one way to look at it. So you'd call the reports inaccurate?" Her reply snapped back instantly. "I'd call them irrelevant. But I suppose asking a woman if she dares to know her worth plays well with your viewers?" The words hung in the air, waited. The audience shifted in their seats. The host adjusted his tie, still wearing the practiced morning show smile, though it had begun to fray at the edges. "For what it's worth," he offered carefully, "I think everyone here respects knowing your worth. I just ask the questions people are already talking about." The retort came like a strike. "People talk because you tell them to. Don't pretend this isn't a loop you created." That landed differently. He blinked, then let out a light laugh, more controlled than amused. "Well, if I created the loop," he said evenly, "you've certainly kept the ratings spinning." The audience broke into a half laugh, half gasp. She gave a clipped chuckle. "Ratings. Always about ratings. Maybe that's the problem with journalism. You mistake attention for truth." For the first time, his smile faltered. He leaned slightly closer, voice softer but carrying weight. "And maybe you mistake criticism for persecution." The silence that followed cut like glass. Off camera, colleagues froze. The control room whispered frantically, "Do they cut to break or stay live?" Arms folded, her smirk returned. "Persecution," she said firmly, "is when a woman tells the truth and men insist on reframing it. Just saying." He exhaled slowly, the smile coming back, brittle around the edges. "Then let's call this what it is, a very lively conversation." Her laugh was sharp. "Conversation? It feels more like an inquisition dressed up with cue cards." The floor manager waved frantically to wrap. The host ignored it. He leaned in, cue cards slack in his hands. "All right," he said, calm but without warmth now. "When we come back after the break, we'll talk legacy, impact, what you leave behind, and whether it's measured in headlines or in history." Her lips tightened, eyes flashing something colder. "Careful," she murmured. The red light blinked off. "Break." But the energy did not break with it. The air was thick. Crew members paused mid-movement. She smoothed her sleeve like nothing had happened. He sat motionless, gaze fixed on the desk, the cards untouched. A co-host leaned in quietly. "You good?" He didn't answer right away, then spoke low. "Not for much longer." The stage manager counted down again. 3, 2, 1, and the red light snapped back on. The audience saw her lean forward, her smile sharpened like a blade, and his eyes, calm but storming. The show returned with its usual upbeat music, but even the audience could feel the shift. The host smiled at the camera, his tone steady, though thinner now. "Welcome back. We're continuing a candid conversation about work, life, and impact." She sat flawless, posture regal, blazer untouched, but her smile brittle. "Yes," she said. "Candid is one word for it." He chuckled softly. "People tune in for honesty, and you've given us plenty this morning." Her lips curved faintly. "Honesty, or what you'd call difficult, you know how it goes. When a woman speaks directly, suddenly it's a problem." He kept his hands folded, nodding. "Not a problem. Just a conversation," she muttered under her breath, though the microphone caught it. "Feels more like sparring." Nervous laughter rippled from the audience. He leaned back, keeping composure. "Well, I'm a morning host, not a boxer. But let's keep going." He glanced at the card, then looked back at her. "You've built a wide portfolio. Productions, philanthropy, speaking. Some see that as stepping out of the royal shadow. Do you feel free of that weight now?" Her smile dropped. "Free? Let me tell you something. Freedom isn't granted by an institution. It's taken. And I took mine the moment I walked away. That wasn't weight. It was baggage I never wanted." He nodded carefully. "So no regrets about leaving that chapter behind?" She gave a scoff. "Regret? Why would I regret leaving behind a family business that saw me as an accessory? I don't regret shedding toxicity. Do you regret leaving high school behind? That's how irrelevant it feels to me." Gasps rippled. Even colleagues on set shifted uneasily. His smile thinned, but his voice stayed measured. "Fair point. Still, a lot of people grew up admiring that institution. They wonder, what did you see that they didn't?" Her eyes narrowed, voice cutting through the studio. I saw the truth. The same truth they hide behind crowns and parades. A monarchy is just public relations wrapped in jewels, and I refuse to play along. The room fell silent. The host's smile was still there, but his eyes were darker now, the weight of the confrontation pulling at the edges. What was meant to be polite morning conversation had become something raw, unfiltered, and volatile, live television at its breaking point. The studio air was tense, heavy with an unspoken charge. The conversation had drifted off script, and everyone knew it. Some in the audience clapped nervously while others froze. The host tried to lighten things with a joke about strong words hurting coffee sales. It drew a laugh, but the guest stayed firm. Coffee sales will survive, she replied. The truth rarely ruins commerce. He shuffled his cards, shifting to reports about her negotiating a bigger budget. Some claimed she demanded more. I don't demand, I expect. She cut in. Men negotiate and are called strong. Women do it and suddenly it's scandal. Why should I apologize for expecting my worth? His smile tightened. No one's asking you to apologize, just clarifying. Clarifying for whom? She shot back. The crowd murmured. Hopefully for both, he said lightly, but she wasn't done. Journalists pretend to be neutral, she accused. You ask, you shape, then claim innocence when it spins. Spare me. The room stilled. His smile faltered but returned thinner. Fair critique, he said calmly. But we're live. Isn't this what you wanted, to speak directly? I wanted honesty, she said, arms crossed. What I got was provocation. Questions about my husband, my children, the monarchy. It's lazy. Gasps rippled. He leaned in, voice edged with steel. Lazy is strong for questions about your own life. You're not asking, she snapped. You're poking wounds, recycling tabloids with a smile. His patience frayed. I ask what millions wonder. You came here voluntarily. Voluntarily, she smirked. Invitations like this aren't really optional when the world demands you. A faint boo rose. He set his cards aside. I've interviewed presidents and survivors. None called honest questions lazy. Maybe they were too afraid, she countered. Or maybe, he said, they understood respect goes both ways. The control room whispered about cutting to break, but the moment was too big. He pressed on. This isn't an inquisition. It only works with mutual respect. Respect is earned, she shot back. Cameras rolled, red lights burned. Honesty rattles people who prefer pleasantries, she smirked. Courtesy isn't pleasantries, he said. Viewers will decide. Viewers see a woman speaking truth to power, she said sharply. That rattles you. You're not used to women pushing back. Gasps filled the studio. I've interviewed strong women, he said evenly. None condescending. If my tone offends you, she countered. Maybe the issue is your inability to handle strong women. The crowd roared. His patience snapped. You came to promote your work. Instead, you dismissed every question as lazy, toxic, irrelevant. These are your choices, your life. You built this platform. You can't sneer at people for wanting clarity. Silence thickened. I'm not sneering, she insisted. I'm setting boundaries. Boundaries protect dignity, he cut in. Walls shut people out. What you've shown isn't strength. It's arrogance. The audience gasped. Some applauded. Arrogance, she snapped. After everything I've endured. And yet you're here, he said coldly, using the spotlight. You reject the crown, but live off the fame it gave you. Without that connection, you wouldn't be here. For the first time, she looked shaken. He continued, quieter but piercing. Respect is earned. Shaming every question doesn't earn it. It alienates people, insults viewers, insults this platform. She froze, face hardening, then stood abruptly, mic clattering. If this is journalism, I was right to walk away. I don't need to be lectured. Without another word, she strode off stage. The audience was stunned, some clapping, others whispering. Cameras stayed live. The host exhaled, facing the lens. We bring guests here for conversation, sometimes hard ones. What you saw is not how we expect those to go. I apologize to our viewers for the disrespect shown today. That's not what we stand for. The screen faded to break, but the moment was already being replayed, dissected, and cemented as one of the most explosive interviews in television history.